Okay, great. Sorry, we were figuring out the recording. Okay, hi everyone. Thank you so much for coming. My name is Jiyun. I'm co-president of Wesleyan Refugee Project this year. And we just wanted to say a huge thank you to all of our panelists, attendees, the Gordon Career Center for coming and for helping us put on this event. This event is also part of International Education Week and is co-hosted by West ELL Tutoring. I see Professor Hepburn is joining right now. Hi, Professor Hepburn. We just wanted to say thank you also for helping us put on this event. We're so happy that all of you can be with us tonight. So basically we wanted to have the student spotlight event in order to not only highlight the amazing work that our fellow peers are engaging with, but also to kind of provide advice and resources for anyone who might be interested in learning about these organizations or thinking about finding possible internships or work opportunities for the future. And hopefully this will be helpful to any students considering a career in education, public policy, refugee resettlement, or humanitarian assistance. And lastly, before we get started, I just wanted to do a quick disclaimer about kind of when we were creating this event, we were struggling with kind of what to title this event and the wording and phrasing that we wanted to use. I think it's always important to be cognizant about kind of the rhetoric that we use when talking about displaced communities, because it is such a broad term and is caused by so many different broad range of issues, not just political persecution, but it can be issues that range from systemic and structural issues of like economic inequality, racial injustice, like so many issues cause displacement. So it's hard to kind of put that all into one label, and we don't want to do that. And also we don't want to use any wording that implies any kind of moral hierarchy or some sort of uneven dynamic. So that was just a quick disclaimer that we just wanted to let you guys know that we are always kind of working to make sure that we are being cognizant of ourselves and our language. And if you guys have any thoughts on that, we would always want to hear about it. And yeah, we just wanted to throw that thought out there. So now I'm going to throw it to Skylar, who helped us coordinate the West ELL tutoring portion of this event. And it would be awesome if she could introduce herself and the class and the panelists we have from West ELL.
Yeah, of course, I would love to. I just want to reiterate everything that Jiyun said. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Skylar. I'm a senior anthropology major and co-coordinator of West ELL Tutoring. My co-coordinator is Erica, who's here tonight. Before I do my little intro, Erica, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, my name's Erica. I'm also a senior and I'm double majoring in government and Hispanic literatures and cultures.
Sweet. So unfortunately, due to the pandemic, we haven't been having tutoring this semester, but I'm super excited to announce that we will be conducting online tutoring next semester with a refugee community support group called SAWA. So we're looking for new and past tutors to join us and get the chance to work with young Syrian students who have recently moved to the Middletown, Hartford area. This is a great opportunity if you're interested in education or you just love hanging out with kids. And if at any point throughout the panel you are interested, please just private message me your email and your class year, and I will put you on our interest list. So tonight, I am incredibly happy to welcome Sophia Sharapa, Sophia Liao, and Will Briskin, who have been tutoring with SAWA this semester through Professor Hepford's class called Teaching English to Speakers of Other Languages. So each of them has been working so hard this semester to provide academic and social support to their tutees, and I'm really looking forward to hearing some of their insights on their experiences. So I just want to say another big thank you to all three of them for agreeing to do this panel and for taking time out of their busy schedules to answer some of our questions. So to start, I was just wondering if the three of you could introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about why you chose to tutor this semester.
I can start. My name is Sophia Sharapa. I'm a junior psychology and education studies major. And I chose to tutor this semester just because ever since I did a service learning class and got the chance to tutor, it's kind of an integral part of each semester now. And without it, kind of my semester seems empty. So tutoring is just a really gratifying experience for me, and I love to hang out with kids. So.
Okay, yeah, I can go. My name is Will. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm double majoring in history and government. I really like tutoring. I first got to do it my junior year when I was accidentally put on the ELL email list and got an email about it randomly and then decided to do it and really enjoyed working with it. And it was awesome to be able to work with kids again. And I just really enjoy working with kids. And so that's why I am tutoring this semester.
Hi, I'm the other Sophia Liao, and I am a triple major in education studies, psychology, and Hispanic literatures and cultures. And I like/enjoy tutoring just because it gives me this opportunity to put everything that I've learned theoretically into practice. And so a lot of times with classes where you're just like, oh, like this is like the idea of what we're doing, this is like what you would do. But I feel like it really lets you take the conditional tense into the present and active, and you're able to actually apply what you've learned and see like direct results and direct feedback.
Thank you so much. My next question is just what has tutoring with SAWA been like this semester? How often do you meet? Who is your tutee? And what kinds of things do you get to do in your sessions?
So we get to, personally, we usually meet on Thursdays, usually in the afternoon / like nighttime for 2 hours. And my tutee, her name is Reem, and she is a 4th grader in Hartford, and she's the most adorable girl ever. She's so fun, so quirky. She loves to sing and dance and like talk about, she likes to cook too, so it's a really fun time with her. But yeah, the structure of our sessions are usually just helping her with her homework. And if she doesn't have any homework and just needs some extra help, then my partner and I, her name's Kayla, and we prepare a presentation with like a lesson plan, just if she doesn't have any homework.
And yeah, so on my end, I'm working with a student named Khalid. He is in 2nd grade, and my partner's name is Caitlin. We kind of meet all over the place, but we definitely meet on Mondays and definitely meet on Wednesdays. Sometimes we meet on Fridays and also Thursdays. It really depends. We have some scheduling issues with our EL. The structure of our lessons, personally, and this is really not like a bad thing at all, but there isn't a whole lot of structure to our lessons because Khalid is very hard to get to focus, but he does come to the session every day smiling and ready to learn. He just gets really excited and goes too fast. And so we do spend a lot of time getting back onto the activities. So I think we fall in just the general academic support type of area, but we get to play a lot of games. Khalid responds really well to games, which is a lot of fun, and he gets really competitive. So we play a lot of spelling and math games, especially. He really likes math. It's very validating when he gets the multiplication questions right many times in a row. So that's basically what my sessions are like.
So I actually have 2 learners, which has been such an interesting experience. And we meet on Tuesday and Thursdays from 6 to 7 p.m. Their names are Rama and Odai. They're actually brother and sister to the other Sophia's EL, funnily enough. And what's really interesting is that Odai is in 2nd grade and he's still very much a beginner English language learner, whereas Rama is in 5th and is actually phased out of the EL program. And so it's just been really interesting seeing the combination of both and being able to apply those skills to both levels. And so with Odai, we usually have some sort of lesson plan for him. For example, this week we're doing food and trying to focus on recognizing food words as well as trying to spell them. Whereas with Rama, we really just do her homework and focus on improving things like her math skills and spelling.
Thank you so much. It's so great to hear about what you do every week. My next question is, what were the greatest challenges of tutoring this semester, and how did you learn to work through them?
I would say the biggest challenge that Kayla and I have tutoring Reem is just because that Reem comes to the session every single week with homework. Sometimes it blindsides us of something that she needs to work on that in the moment we don't have anything prepared to like prime her with information or something, or review like the general like foundation topics. And so the biggest challenge is just being adaptable in those moments and trying our best to help Reem understand the topics of her homework, and then also to keep her engaged in the homework because it's really clear that she doesn't understand, and we need to like take a few steps back and start from square one so that she can have the confidence to go forward. So just being adaptable and then keeping Reem engaged with her homework, I think, is the biggest challenge.
So for us personally, I would say I'll just answer with two short challenges that have been equally challenging. The first is just the technology, not in terms of actually teaching with the technology, but with my EL specifically, and the ability to leave and change your background and mute yourself and present. It just gives him an extended sort of power to disrupt the lesson. But we did, one of the solutions we figured out on that was sort of how to take away some of those abilities from his end of the Google Meet. So that's been largely solved because he can no longer start presenting and changing his background randomly, which definitely helps with the general focus. But then I think on the teaching side, one of the things that I've really struggled with, as well as my partner, is being able to explain topics in a way that are approachable and digestible for Khalid. For example, today we were teaching multiplication, and I had to explain what multiplication was, or attempt to, without actually using the word multiplication, which I found, because he didn't know what that meant, which I found to be incredibly difficult. And so that, has been a challenge, but that the class has really helped support in terms of overcoming that. The class with Professor Hepford this semester, and talking about strategies and techniques to explain things better.
I would definitely agree with Sophia and Will in that my biggest challenge this semester has been with technology, and just there have been audio issues, connectivity issues. For the most part, my class tries to use Google Meet, but with my learners, it just wasn't working. So we had to revert to Zoom. And so I would say just the ability to adapt and be flexible, like they mentioned before, has been really crucial. Also, something that I didn't personally expect was having to tutor math, which is very naive of me, but I thought like, oh, English language learners, they're learning English as in like English class, but having to apply that to concepts and classes like math has been challenging for me, and just trying to break concepts down to a more digestible level for my learners.
Thank you. Yeah, I definitely agree with all that. Like, tutoring online is a new level of hard. And as Will was saying, like getting to meet every week in the class has been really helpful. But for the club next semester, we will have orientations and meetings and provide support for our tutors so that we can kind of foster community and get advice from each other on how to work through some of these challenges. So I have two more questions. This one is just, what has the most positive aspect of tutoring this semester been like for all of you?
One, it's just really fun to do. It's definitely the highlight of my week every week, just getting to spend 2 hours with her, just because she's the sweetest kid ever. But then also just, I feel like the stereotypical answer is like seeing the light bulb go off on certain topics. Like there was one time when I was explaining how to carry the one in addition, or like carry the tens place. And just one time she was like, oh, I get it. And like that moment, I was like, this is literally why this is amazing. One, because it's gratifying for me, but then also she gets to have that moment where she has now the confidence to do all the rest of the problems and like not be afraid to do addition anymore, which is amazing.
Yeah, so there's been a lot of really wonderful parts about working with Khalid. I think the thing that I actually enjoy most is that his energy, which is also one of the more challenging things. But Khalid shows up every day with a really big smile and excited to learn, and ends every lesson by usually asking for more time and not saying, oh no, like we didn't, like I'm not ready to go, I want to spend more time with you guys. And just getting the opportunity to see his smile and the excitement that he approaches learning. Like today, for example, he was like, wait, can we not do the lesson, and can you guys teach me a college lesson? And he was like, can you, so I can know college things and like tell all my friends. And he really wants to be smart, and he is very smart, and he really is smart, and he has this just infectious energy that makes some of the classroom management stuff, it just makes me smile, even though it is disruptive. It's just so wonderful to really to see the potential, I think, if I had to put it in one word, in terms of where he's going, and just excited to see that, the energy that he, approaches school. It's just really refreshing and nice.
Very similar to what they've said. One of my learners, Rama, she usually has these spelling worksheets every single week. And a lot of times she'll say things like, oh, like, I don't know how to do this. And she feels really discouraged. But like, there's this wonderful moment when she realizes like, actually, like she can do this. And she actually does understand the concepts. We were doing alphabetization last week, and she thought she didn't know how to do it, and we just sort of nudged her along, and she got everything correct without basically any guidance from us. So it's just basically us having the ability to be there and be their cheerleaders and their confidence boosters has been really rewarding.
Thank you so much. I think we're actually just going to end on that super positive note. And thank you so much to our 3 amazing panelists and for all the hard work that they put into this semester. And if you're interested in tutoring with SAWA next semester, please message me your email in the chat, and I'll hand it back to Lizzie and Ji-yoon for the rest of the panel.
Thank you so much, Skylar, and all the ELL tutors. And if anyone is interested, please reach out to Skylar if you guys also want to be involved with SAWA. Okay, awesome. So we have 3 panelists on WRP's side that are going to just kind of talk about some of their previous work experiences with different organizations. So I'm going to do very brief intros of our panelists, but I'm also just going to give them the opportunity to introduce themselves. So I think our first panelist is Ishika, and Ishika is actually a recent graduate of Wesleyan. She was a CSS major. She is currently working at the Center on Immigration and Justice at Vera Institute of Justice. And then prior to her time at Vera, Ishika was involved with Integrated Refugee and Immigrant Services, IRIS, which is a subsection of WRP that we help with. And then she also interned with International Refugee Assistance Project, IRAP, with a legal project that they're doing. And Ishika's interest in borders and their legal impact on human mobility is what draws her to this certain fields of work. So we're so excited to have Ishika be here with us today. I'm actually going to ask her a couple questions that are specific to kind of her experience, and then I'm going to introduce our 2 other panelists, Indigo and Lizzie. So Ishika, do you mind if I ask you these questions now?
Please go ahead. Thanks for that introduction to you.
Yeah, of course. So if you want to introduce yourself really quickly, anything I missed, please do so. And then my first question that you can answer after is kind of how I kind of want to talk about IRAP first. So how you got involved with IRAP and what kind of work did you do with them?
Sure, thank you. I think you pretty much nailed everything. I just wanted to also add that I'm an international student, and if anybody else is an international student and it has any questions about that, feel free to reach out to me, because that is obviously like a significant aspect of being employed in the United States. And I got involved with IRAP between my sophomore and junior summer. And it was actually through WRP. I received, I think back when I was in WRP, just like a couple months ago, we had these circulars that we passed around with all the internship opportunities that WRP sort of had an idea of, and I applied through that. And surprisingly, I was selected, and I worked with their alternative and complementary pathways internship, which is just sort of a half research, half legal assistance work. So my research sort of just included looking at different ways to relocate people, because even now and back then, many countries were closing off their resettlement quotas of how many refugees they want to resettle. And because of that, many resettlement efforts had failed to relocate people, and there were just a rising number, and still is a rising number, of people in camps. So part of my research was just involved in figuring out other ways that are just not resettlement. So I looked at family reunification, which was a big aspect of my research, and then student visas for young refugees, and something along those lines. And then the other part of my work was sort of legal assistance, which was the direct sort of communication with people who were facing displacement and were applying for refugee status with UNHCR, which is United Nations Human Rights Commission, and they were denied, or they applied for resettlement and were denied. So we were helping them with their appeals, and I had to do intakes and coordinate their file with the attorneys involved, and then sort of I was like the middleman in between attorneys and the clients. Did I cover it all?
Yeah, that's amazing. That kind of leads me to my next question of just in your experience, what do you think is like the biggest challenge that legal advocacy for displaced communities presents? And like, is there something, are there like certain obstacles that you find like notable within this field of work?
Yeah, there are many. I don't even know where to begin, but I think the biggest obstacle I could identify in the kind of work I've been involved with is how complicated the whole process is. And like we were sort of discussing before, it's just not possible to call someone a refugee or somebody who's displaced, because everyone's experiences are so unique, and every individual has their own personal experience that you cannot sort of put into advocacy language and legal language alone. A lot of it is just listening to people and their stories and being unable to translate that into your advocacy and legal work. So I think that definitely is one of the biggest challenges that I have faced. And I'm still trying to figure out how to go around it.
Yeah, thank you for that. So now that you are at Vera Institute for Justice, can you talk a little bit about what you do there and how you found this job opportunity?
Sure. So actually, I heard of the nonprofit through just like looking for internships over the summer, just the whole process that everyone goes through. And I came across them, but I was writing a thesis, so I didn't want to apply for an internship position. But then this was before my senior year started. And then in my senior fall, the Career Center had this policing reform talk with alumni who are involved in that kind of work. And Vera is known for their reimagining incarceration and police reform research project that they undertake. So I attended one of those, I guess like it was a talk, and then I looked them up and I saw that they had a really cool center on immigration and justice, and they were doing a lot of work that I found very interesting. So I applied, and yeah, I don't know, I got it, I guess, and here I am.
Amazing. And what kind of work do you do with them within their immigration justice department?
So I work as a program coordinator for the Unaccompanied Children's Project, which is just providing legal assistance to children who are facing who are apprehended by ICE and now are in the Office of Refugee and Resettlement Detention Centers. So I'm again providing more like the legal assistance aspect of it, but this time I don't have a lot of direct involvement with the clients. I'm just sort of coordinating between legal service providers and the kiddos that are detained.
Amazing. And what do you think the most challenging aspect of this job is? And what kind of motivates you to keep working within this realm of work?
Sure, that's a great question. I think what is challenging about this kind of work in general is you're sort of in a perpetual loop of bad news, especially under the current administration that we have. So it's like you're at work and it's just terrible news after terrible news, and then you're off work and you turn the news on. It's kind of the same pattern. So definitely for me, I think I had a hard time disassociating work from non-work, also because the pandemic kind of makes you work from home and you're in the same area. So it's just like a lot of that cyclical negative sentiments at all times. So that is something that I have encountered in this kind of work. And could you remind me what the second part of that question was?
Yes. What kind of motivates you to keep involving yourself or engaging with this realm of work?
Right. So as I kind of mentioned, I'm also an international student, and it's even though like what we call legal immigration is very different from undocumented immigration, the system is just rigged, and I've kind of experienced that, and I think my personal experiences with it definitely motivates me to keep working in this kind of field, especially because any system that kind of makes you hate yourself for whatever identity, like for instance, my nationality has the hardest time, like I'm an Indian citizen and we have the hardest time surviving this immigration regime in the US and everywhere pretty much. So that is something that like a personal experience within this system that kind of drives me to be involved.
Thank you so much for sharing that and about your experiences. I just want to ask you one last question about if you could give like any piece of advice for someone who is also looking into working in this field or this field of like immigration law and justice. Do you have any advice that you would want to give them?
Yeah, I think this is a really cool field, and we definitely need more advocates involved in this field. And that brings me to sort of the kind of advice that I would give is through electoral politics, it's very hard to like present the experiences and advocate for people that are facing displacement or are immigrants at large, because electoral politics sort of panders to the need of people who are considered to be citizens. So I think in any work that you do, if it's legal or if it's like advocacy or even if it's policy, you should always make advocacy a part of your lens, of your focus, and try to integrate it to the work that you do, because it's I feel like it's very much needed, just because, and to raise awareness, especially within people who don't necessarily understand the immigration system, because they may not ever have to be in it or be acquainted with it. So I think making advocacy a focus of your work is always very important.
Yes, totally agree. Thank you so much, Ishika, for your time and for coming.
Thanks
We
for
miss you
having
so
me.
much here at Wesleyan
I'm
Refugee
so glad to
Project
be
and at
back.
Wesleyan. Yes, thank you so much for sharing all of that. And now I want to go to our next panelist, Indigo. And Indigo is actually our social media coordinator for WRP. She is a government major and Middle Eastern Studies minor here at Wesleyan. She has also done this really cool internship with a nonprofit in Jordan called Reclaim Childhood. I am going to let her talk more about that. But I just wanted to start with a couple questions. So Indigo, do you want to introduce yourself really quickly and kind of talk about what Reclaim Childhood does, and then what kind of led you to intern with them, and how you kind of found this opportunity?
Yeah, so I'm Indigo. Like Gian said, I am a government major, Middle Eastern Studies minor. And I would say that I found this internship on Handshake when I was a freshman. And it just seemed really cool because I knew I wanted to do Middle Eastern Studies at Wesleyan. And I'm also on the women's lacrosse team. So sports have been a very big part of my life. And so like with my Arabic studies and sports, and then also for the past 2 summers, I'd worked at a summer camp, just like in the US. And so just the idea that I would be able to like work with kids and do sports things in the Middle East kind of seemed like a dream come true to me. And Reclaim Childhood is an organization that was actually founded by 2 Williams College graduates who are athletes. And they worked with Iraqi refugees in Jordan to build this sports camp. And so it was founded in 2008 and since then has extended to serve 7 different nationalities. So I was a summer intern there. So I was a summer monitoring and evaluation intern. So I worked we ran summer camp, like sports summer camp with coaches in the mornings. And then in the afternoons, we did a lot more NGO administration work.
Okay, amazing. Thank you for sharing that. Okay, yeah, so my next question is kind of talking about like what kind of considerations do you think other students who are interested in working with international NGOs, like what should they kind of take into account when researching these organizations?
I think something that I found really useful when I went there, but I didn't really think about before was like when I was thinking about applying on my cover letter, I remember writing, I'm so excited to be a role model for these girls. Like I love sports and I've found ways to incorporate sports into my life that have been really incredible for me. And I want to be able to kind of like show these girls the same thing and work with them and like be that role model for them. And then I got to Jordan and I showed up on the first day with like my intern cohort. There were 7 of us, and our boss, who's American, said that basically like our job isn't to be the role models for these refugee girls. We don't speak the same language as them and we don't look like them. And Reclaim Childhood, what is really special in my opinion about it is that they employ local coaches, most of whom are refugees. So these coaches like live in the same communities as the girls. And so as a college student from the US, my job was kind of more just to like be there and do a lot of the administrative work that because of my like competence in the English language, it makes it so that I can like kind of do more of that like NGO work. Whereas and then like as at the sports camp, my job was more just to like empower the coaches to be able to be the best coaches they could for these girls, just in terms of like helping set up drills or set up cones or like collect balls at the end of the day, or hop in and keep running a drill if a coach had to go like talk to a girl who's crying on the side, or if a coach had to go deal with like conflict resolution. then it would be my job to kind of step in and continue the drill. But it was, I guess, pretty humbling just to realize that I think there is a lot of criticism of people, like Americans going abroad, and just the whole, white savior complex of I'm going to help refugee girls in Jordan. But I think working there really reframed how I thought about it, just in the sense of being able to offer the skills that I am really privileged to have, but also understanding that the organization is most effective because it really digs into the local community, and builds community, rather than just like having Americans come in and run things and then leave.
Yeah, thank you for kind of touching on that. Like, I think it's definitely very important to be kind of cognizant of the dynamics like you mentioned. So yeah, moving forward on that, what was your favorite part of your internship?
My favorite part of the internship had to be just being able to go to sports camp every day. I would show up and be like, I can't believe this is my job that I get to do this summer, because while my job wasn't to be the direct role model to these girls, I still got to kind of like share those spaces. And I firmly believe that there is such a universal language in sports. Just in I don't know, I learned a lot more Arabic about like sports lingo. Like I learned how to say ball and field and all of that so quickly, just through being there and getting to know these girls. And also the coaches. I was able to work at Reclaim Childhood for 6 months, because I also studied abroad in Jordan that fall. And the coaches became some of my very best friends in Jordan. And I still keep in touch with some of them. And there was the language barrier. I was very worried about it when I went in, but I had so much fun just learning Arabic words from the coaches, and they would laugh at my Arabic. But it's just, yeah, it was amazing to be able to kind of learn Arabic in a less formal setting.
That sounds amazing. So yeah, okay. Could you kind of talk more about the role that you think sports play in kind of this social peace building in Jordan?
Yeah, so basically, just a quick background, Jordan, about 30% of Jordan is the different refugee populations. The biggest ones are Palestinian, Syrian, and Iraqi. And so basically Jordan receives a lot of international aid to support refugees, which is really important because they do have such a big refugee population, and they don't really have any internal resources to balance their economy. But because of that, there's a lot of competition for the same resources from different groups of refugees. And because Jordan is very open about welcoming in different refugees, they often end up not being able to support them as well as they would like to. So I think that's, from what I witnessed, to girls of different nationalities at the beginning of the week that they were at sports camp would be pretty much pretty insular and being with their sisters or their neighbors, and not really branch out. And that definitely manifested in conflict sometimes, just because sports are such that, you have to play on teams with people you don't always like. And so something that I really, really liked about Reclaim Childhood is that conflict between girls they weren't just told to stop fighting. There is such an active effort to kind of build friendship through conflict resolution. So talking out why a girl was mad at another girl. And sometimes a girl would be oh, it's because she looks different than me, or because her skin is darker. So I think that those kind of tensions between different nationalities manifested at Reclaim Childhood, but it was a space where they were able to be worked out, and just being on teams together kind of naturally also led to further social cohesion.
Thank you so much for that. Sounds awesome. I have more questions I want to ask you, but I'm just being cognizant of the time. So maybe I just want to end on a quick question of, what do you think is the most notable part of what have you learned? Have you had a notable takeaway from this internship? And do you have any advice for anyone who would want to work at an organization like Reclaim Childhood?
So I would say the biggest thing I learned in reflecting on it so I did a lot of, I was a monitoring and evaluation intern. So I looked at I tracked kind of different nationalities of girls and their attendance rates and all different kinds of things. And we took a lot of surveys. And one survey that we did was if a girl didn't come back to camp the next summer or for the next season, we would ask their parents why they didn't come back. And oftentimes the answer was oh, because we want them to go to Quran studies, or we want her to do more school, or we don't really see important benefits of sports. And I think that those answers kind of taught me that I feel there are a lot of stereotypes about women in the Middle East not being able to play sports or not being empowered. And I think that just introduced so many more nuances to me that just because a parent was oh, we don't want our girl to come back to go back to a sports camp, it's not necessarily because the parent was girl shouldn't play sports. I think there's so many other factors that go into it. And so I guess that kind of refutes the idea that oh, girls, parents don't think girls should play sports in Jordan, which was a really important lesson for me. And then for anyone thinking about going into that kind of work, I think just going in knowing that you are not going to change anyone's life when you're there. You're not the purpose, you're going to learn so much more from other people than they'll learn from you, in my opinion. So just going in with an open mind and knowing that yeah, you have a lot, you've probably done a lot of successful things in life, but if you're working at an organization like this, it's not because I don't know, I just going in and asking a lot of questions rather than thinking you're gonna change anything. Yeah.
Great. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing all of that and your experience with Reclaim Childhood. That sounds amazing. And okay, our last panelist is Lizzie. Lizzie is co-president of WRP with me, and she was hesitant on being a panelist, but I asked her to just because she has done really great work with a bunch of different organizations. And I know I definitely kind of really wanted her to speak on this panel. So yeah, so Lizzie is also a senior here, majoring in anthropology and environmental studies and minoring in Middle Eastern studies. She's also interned with Jewish Family Service of San Diego last summer, and she has also worked or interned with the Institute of Family Health in Jordan, and has done a lot of work with WRP. I will let her do a quick introduction of herself. And maybe Lizzie, if you could kind of tell us how you also got into the work or working with refugee resettlement agencies.
Yeah, of course. Hi, everyone. For me, on a very initial thing, I think in high school, one of my friends actually came to the United States from Syria through the United States Refugee Resettlement Program. And so that was the first time that I really was exposed to the benefits of refugee resettlement, on a personal level. And also at the same time, I was in a club where we were learning about different social conflicts around the world. And it just happened to be that the two countries that we chose, Syria and Myanmar, were experiencing displacement at the time. So it was very much on a superficial level at the time, but I became aware that these were problems that were happening and that I wanted to learn more so that I could figure out how I could get involved. So in college, I became really involved with Wesleyan Refugee Project and learned about all of the great work that all these organizations were doing. And just saw so much of what refugee asylum seekers and immigrants can bring to the United States. And also at the same time, I was taking classes where I was just learning about how while the United States and Canada and the UK and Germany give aid to countries that are hosting refugees, like Lebanon, Jordan, and Turkey, this aid is often not enough. And they often use that as an excuse to not take in refugee asylum seekers and immigrants. And for me, it was really frustrating because the United States has resources to take in many more refugee asylum seekers and immigrants, yet we choose not to. And so why I'm really involved in the work is I think it's so important to push the United States government to do this, because it's one of the best ways that the United States can engage in humanitarian work, especially because the United States is responsible for causing many of the problems that led to displacement in the first place.
Yes, so true. Yeah, so can you talk a little bit more about how you found your internship with Jewish Family Service of San Diego, and kind of what work did you do there?
Yeah, so actually I was supposed to be doing a legal internship with another HIAS partner, HIAS of, Pennsylvania, but with COVID, that internship got canceled. But luckily I had received a grant from Wesleyan to work with a Jewish refugee resettlement agency. And if you don't know, HIAS is one of 9 United States refugee resettlement agencies, and it's the only Jewish affiliated one. And so what I did is I had done research through IRAP of the past 2 years. And so I just had a list in my head of the different HIAS partner organizations. And I just went and I emailed all of them. I sent my resume, I explained the situation, I explained why I wanted to do that work. And Jewish Family Service, they called me, they interviewed me, and it was a great fit. And I was really happy that they gave me a chance, even though everything was so chaotic with COVID.
Yeah, totally. That's awesome. So yeah, okay. So I guess talking about COVID and your internship, did you have to make any kind of adjustments? Like, did the internship itself have to make any adjustments, like in response to the pandemic, and what kind of novel challenges did that bring to the organization?
Yes. So normally Jewish Family Service doesn't take any interns outside of the region, but they made an exception because of COVID. And so I did everything virtually. But the biggest change was that most of their clients normally go to English schools that are in the San Diego area. But because of COVID, all of the English schools closed in March and to this moment are still closed. And so they're still getting new arrivals from Afghanistan. And so many of these clients, when I joined in May, hadn't had a single English lesson up to that time. And so the main priority was I worked with my coworkers to design and run an English language program that was very focused on like a self-sustaining model. So we asked the clients, what do you want to learn? What vocabulary would be most helpful for you? And then we designed our curriculum around that. So an example of an activity we did was we did mock appointment calls. And so they practiced making doctor's appointments. I was working with a lot of different levels as well. And some of the clients are pre-literate. So we practiced holding pencils on Zoom as well. And we would just like hold up our writing. And so it definitely was a challenge, but we found really creative solutions. And I think also what's really helpful for me is most of the office itself are former refugees from the countries that they're working with. And so it was really helpful. Like if I was having trouble with a lesson, I would just turn to like my Afghan coworker, and he would like help me explain like and walk me through like what I was having problems with. And I think like especially like that cultural knowledge and competency is so important in refugee resettlement. And I think oftentimes in other organizations, they sometimes don't have employees from the countries that they are working with, which I think is a problem. So it was really great that they did.
That's great. I have just one last question for you. Just before we delve into our Q&A portion of the event. So just to sum it up, what do you think is the most notable thing that you've learned throughout kind of all of your experiences working with these different organizations? I know that you didn't get to speak about all of them, but do you have like a certain takeaway or kind of the biggest thing you've learned throughout your experiences?
Ooh, that's such a hard question. I think it's really important before you get involved with any organization to just look very clearly into their intentions and their models as an organization. Like with Jewish Family Service, they're modeled on a self-sufficiency model. And so it's very much like we have like a bunch of skills, let's figure out like what our clients need and then we'll give it to them. And I think like that is such a great model to have, especially because remember like many of these clients, like some of my students would tell me like that they miss like their engineering jobs in Afghanistan. And so, but it's just because like the way that the United States is set up and the way that they don't recognize their past work experience, that they often have to start at entry-level jobs, which can be so frustrating as well. And so it's so important that if you're doing this kind of work, to be involved with an organization that is aware of the nuances and the complexities of like what it means to be involved with like working with displaced communities.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. That is very good advice. All right, yeah, so we have a little less than 10 minutes. It is okay if we go over, but we do want to be respectful of everyone's time. Do any of the people who came to the event have any questions for our panelists, or to like Wes ELL if you're interested in joining? Any questions, you can raise your hand, whether that's on advice on how to maybe find an opportunity within kind of the fields of work that people have been talking about, or just questions, comments, concerns, anything. All welcome. I am not seeing any hands. Do panelists have questions for each other? All right, looks like there are no questions. But I just wanted to say a big thank you to everyone who came and to all of our panelists. We did record this event, and I know some students have been asking to see it. So, and it will be also sent to International Education Week.
There's also something else that we have to bring up that I just remembered. There's a survey that we would like everyone to fill out. One sec.
Yes, so if you can fill out the survey, definitely fill out the survey. I think Lizzie is finding the link. We'll put it on our Facebook page. If Lizzie can't find it right now. Okay, she found it. Okay, great. Thank you guys so much for coming. We really appreciate all of you. All right.
Thank you.
If you guys, thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks.
Bye. Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye. Hi, Stella. How are you?
I'm good. I have a home maintenance item to bring up with you.
Okay, wait, I'll call you after this. Okay.
Amazing event. Thank you.
Of course. Bye.